Hey everybody, Dave here, and I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining me for another video. Today I'm going to be building a pigeon coop, or pigeon loft, however you want to call it, to help train my dog Grace. I just got her in March and just about ready to introduce her to birds or so in a month. So I thought I'd build a small loft in order to accommodate some pigeons for her and help her with her training. So today I'm going to take you step by step. It's a really simple build. It's not super expensive, and I hope it's going to be a help to you. So stick around. We're going to jump right into it. Okay, so let's jump over here and I'll show you some of the lumber I got. Now this is a whole lot more than I'm going to need. I changed this design a couple of times, so I bought extra, and I went to a simpler design which is going to be less lumber, so some of this is going to be going back. So let me just show you what I got here. I have some 2x4s, 8-foot long, pressure treated, some 2x4s spruce, 8-foot long regular, and then I've got some 1x3 trim here, and I've got two 4x4s by 8 feet long pressure treated, and these and the other pressure treated 2x4s are going to be the base for the loft. The loft itself is going to be 4 foot by 8 foot and about 6 foot and a 6.5 foot on the highest. Then over here, what I have to enclose this is these metal sheets right here. Now I got these roofing sheets at a metal liquidator, a junkyard, about an hour from me. They're 75 cents a pound, and so I got 13 sheets here for about $200, which if you would go to a big box store and buy these, you would find that they run about $40 to $45 a sheet. So you would get roughly 5 sheets. I've got 13 here, so I found a big savings just by going to a junkyard, and they're not in bad shape. They can be painted. Again, it's a pigeon loft. It's not anything I'm looking to go crazy about. Just something that I can train my dog Grace with. So anyway, let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be cutting these 4x4s down to 8 foot right here, and then I'm going to be cutting these to the proper size. I will have a complete cut list and a materials list in the description below, so you can check that out to know exactly what lumber I used, how many sheets of metal roofing, all that. So if you want to build this exact same loft, you'll be able to do so. So let's get the truck over here and let's start cutting. Okay, so now that I've cut down these 4x4s to length, they usually run 3/4 to a 1/2 inch long for pressure treated lumber, so make sure you always measure them before you use them. They're now cut to 96 inches or 8 foot, and the next thing I'm going to do is crown these. And what you do is you sight down the end of the boards, and you can find out where the curve is on these, and you want that curve to go up and down like this, not side to side or to belly like that. And so what that does is when you build on this, then, because we're going to be putting 2x4s along here, okay, and that's going to be the joist for our floor, and then when that's on top and everything, over time that board that's curved up a little bit will level out. And so that's why you want to make sure the crown is facing up, and I've marked them as such. And so now I'm going to go over and I'm going to come over here to the spot where I'm going to put this pigeon loft, and I'm going to put it next to our chicken run here. And the one thing I've researched is you always want to put a pigeon loft facing south. That way is north, and so we're going to face it this way, south. I'm going to level up the ground here fairly well, and then we'll get our floor built. The other thing that'll do is it will give the pigeons lots of sunlight, and the wind comes from this direction, which is the west. And what that's going to do is I'm going to have a solid wall there, so that'll block any drafts the birds might feel. They'll be able to get out of the wind in the winter time, and that'll help them out greatly. So let's jump over and grab the rake and start leveling this off. Okay, now that I have the base down, I've put the joists going across, the 2x4 joists, at 16 inches on center. But they're not really that critical. We're not putting down a plywood base or anything on this. What I'm going to be doing for this floor is I'm going to be running 2 strips of expanded metal there and here along the front in about 18 inches on each side. And then I'm going to have a plank walkway right down the middle. That way I can wash the coop out with the hose, and all the junk and feathers and manure will go down into the bottom. And that way it'll get airflow underneath and up through into the coop as well. Now before I do any of that, I have to take a measurement diagonally this way and then that way and make them the same, that I know that the base will be square. Then we can start our vertical building from there. Okay, now that I have the platform down and squared and everything, next thing I'm going to do is work on the 4 uprights, and that's these here. What I've done is taken some 2x4s full length and I've just nailed them together like that. There's 4 of them, and now I'm going to lay these out. So the back wall is going to be 6 feet high and the front of the front wall will be 7 foot high. So being the coop, or the loft, however you want to say it, is 4 feet wide, okay, I'm going up a foot, so that makes this a 312 pitch, or 14 degrees. And if you're not sure how to figure that out, you can just use a roof pitch calculator and put in your rise and your run and all that, and it'll come up for you. Okay, so let me show you how I lay out these angles. I've measured from back here on 2 of these to 6 foot, and I measured the other ones up here to 7 foot. And then what I've done is I've taken the speed square here and I've just placed it on here like this. This is going to be the outside edge right here, and so the taper is going to go up towards the front, so I want that to come up that way. So the way I do this is I place it on here on the mark, and then this bottom row here is the common rafter, and so I want it to go to 3 pitch or 14 degrees, and so I'll just turn this like that. You can see it's right there on 3 and 14, and I draw my line. Do that for that one. On this one here, I just do it the opposite way. This is the front over here, and I'll draw the line backwards. So this is going to be front, this is going to be back, and I'll mark them as such, so that way I don't get confused. Okay, that sure beats doing it up in place. And these scraps here are going to work out perfect for perches for the birds. So you're probably wondering why I'm using this type of a framing, you know, more of a pole barn framing than the vertical framings you're used to seeing in a shed, say. And the reason for that is it's faster and it's also going to take less lumber. And as far as weight on this, it's very little weight. It's really just snow load, which isn't much. And what you have to realize is that the 4 posts on the corners are going to be taking a lot of the weight, but as I add the metal panels to this and screw them to the cross members and that are attached to the post, all that weight's going to be distributed along those panels as well. They're going to be taking a lot of the weight too, transferring it down to the foundation of the 4x4s on the ground. Now you might also see that I haven't been squaring things up and leveling things up, and that's because I don't have to right now, and I'll explain to you why. As long as I make sure that the cross members, the width and the length are all the same, and I measure them from the bottom first to make sure they're exact, and then when I place them all the way up onto the very top portion, even if it's crooked a little bit this way or that way, it doesn't matter, because when I add the metal panels, which are factory cut square, I'll be able to use them to pull everything into line before I screw everything fast. And when I'm done, everything should be plumb and level to the foundation. Okay, so just something to think about. And there's a few little tricks I'll show you along the way to help save you a little lumber, but make sure you get really nice tight corners too. So let's jump back into it. I'm going to put the rest of the cross members on, and then we're going to start with some other stuff. Okay, so now that I have the frame in as far as I want to go before I start adding the door, and the door is going to go right in this area here, right off of this main support. I'm going to have the opening here, and then over, I'm going to come over. If you notice, there's 1 joist, 2 joists, the 3rd joist, I'm going to put the door right on the other side of this, and that's because that panel is 38 inches from the end over to here, and I want to be able to cut out the panel in my doorway. All right, that way I'll have the structural integrity of the panel. And so 27.5 inches is what it's going to be. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and put that board right there, nail it both ways. But before I can install that board, I have to cut this angle on the upright for the door for the hinge side. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll bring it back and we'll install it. So the next thing we have to do is just add blockers in here, and what that's going to do is just allow us something really firm to tighten the corners to the metal. And you might be wondering, why am I using sheet metal on a pigeon barn? Well, first off, is a lot of reasons. It's very inexpensive for me compared to plywood or something like that. The other reason is I don't have to paint it, and I'll be able to put the sheet metal on the roofing here and it's done. I don't have to shingle it, I don't have to tar paper it. It's going to save me a lot of work and a lot of time. Now the only other thing we need to do after we put the blocking in is put 2 rafters across this way, purlins, to help support the weight of the roof, which isn't going to be much. So let's get started on these blockers, and I'll show you a little trick here so that you don't have to put blocking on both sides. Okay, so let me grab a piece of wood and I'll show you what I mean. So what we're going to do is cut pieces of wood to match this, to fit in between here. And then what we're going to do is just going to move them forward, as you can see right there, like that, until they're flush with the front here and they're flush in the side here. And then we'll just put a few nails in here. That'll give us a firm screwing surface for the panels, both here and here on the corners. And it's going to save us lumber. You don't have to put lumber both ways to block this in. Okay, now that I have the blocking in, and you can see that right here, all the way up through, over there, over here, and frame the door in. I put one solid 2x4 here, up to here, and then blocking. There's just a little space here that's not going to matter. And then what I did also inside here is I placed blockers here. These are 3.5 inches high to match this board right here, and that's going to allow me to staple the fence that's going to go around here with a 1/2 inch mesh. And I did that on all 4 corners, as you can see. And then I also did a detail here, something similar, where I'll be able to put the mesh here and then across and around like that. And then this board just allows me to fasten it close to there. So the other thing is I installed the rafters here, or the purlins, and I just came in from the top there, 13 inches, drew a line, put the on this side, came in here 13 inches, drew a line, put it on that side, and they're pretty close to being 1/3 of the way each way. And I'm going to clear these vines back today before I start with the metal. But one of the other details I wanted to show you is right here. You want to make sure that you place a board across the top there so that this cross member right here is lower than that, because if you put it up even with this, what's going to happen is you're going to have this bump. You're either going to have to rip it or just drop it lower, and that way when the roof metal goes on, it'll clear that nice and easily. So what I'm going to do for the floors, I'm going to be putting in some 1/2-inch mesh hardware cloth. I'm going to put a vent here and another one here, and then I'm going to have 2 2x8s that are going to be my walkway, so I'll be able to walk down, but that'll give plenty of airflow up through the bottom. So then as that air rises, this area right here between the door and the front will be all 1/2-inch hardware cloth, and I'll have an entryway right here for the pigeons to come in and out of as well. And so that's going to give plenty of ventilation. The one thing is, you want a lot of ventilation with pigeons. They're used to living under bridges and barns and things like that. You just need to create a shelter for them, really, and just to keep them out of the blowing wind. And if you can do that, they'll fare really well. It's not like the chicken coop I have over here, where I have windows that open and close, and in the wintertime I kind of box them in because they can't take the cold as much as the pigeons can. So now we're just about ready for the mesh will go down. We'll do the floor, we'll do here, and then we can start with the paneling. Okay, in order to create lots of ventilation in the coop or the loft, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to be installing this hardware cloth. These 62-inch pieces are going to go on the side. This is 24 inches wide, and I have a 50-foot roll of it. And what I'm going to do is place this on the floor and also higher up on the wall, and that's going to allow plenty of ventilation for me. I'm going to be fastening them with these narrow crown staples right here. They're 18 gauge, and these are 1 inch long. Okay, what I've done now is I've taken the hardware cloth and I've run 2 strips down here. And the width of the coop is actually 49 inches. I made it 49 by accident, and I measured incorrectly. I made the joist here 1 inch longer. And so now it's 49 inches, which really worked out well because the hardware cloth is 24 inches, and so it fits perfectly in there. I don't have to cut anything. And so then what I did is, after that's down, and I stapled it using a pneumatic crown stapler with 1 inch staples. But if you don't have that, you can certainly use regular staples, or even electrical Romex staples, the metal ones, and that'll hold it down really well. And then what I did was I put some runners on top here. They're pressure treated, so when I wash this all down, I don't have to worry about it rotting, same as the base. And then I will caulk around the other posts that aren't pressure treated, just so the water runs off of those. And the 2x8 I had, so I just threw that in there to give it a little bit wider walk space, and that way I get plenty of ventilation as well. So now we're going to jump over to the paneling, and I'm going to start by doing the ends of the paneling, because what I want to do is I want to cut that angle, and by screwing a panel to the frame, it's going to allow me to trace it with a magic marker, take it off and cut it, and I'm going to get perfect angles that way. So, Grace, do you approve? Grace approves. Okay, I've screwed the first panel up. I've only put 3 screws in it. It's just to hold it in place so I can mark it. One of the things that you want to be aware of is when you're installing the panels, you'll see that there's just a round over here and it stops. And then on this side, you'll see a round over and it has a flange. So you always want to start with the round over up against where you're going to start. I left a little space here because I want to slide the other panels behind this to kind of let the wind go around it. All right, so now all I'm going to do is take a magic marker and I'm going to go on the inside and draw a line up through there. Then I can take it off, cut it, and install it. So in case you're wondering what I'm using to fasten the metal panels on, these are metal roofing screws. This one here I think is 1.5 inches long, 1.25 inches, and it has a rubber washer right here, and then a metal washer, and then it has a hex head, 1/4 inch drive hex head, and that just zips it down, and then the washer seals it, and they work pretty good. You don't have to pre-drill the metal. The point is very sharp, so it drives right through and creates its own hole. And I just use my drill driver with a 1/4 inch driving bit on that to drive it in. Nothing special. So in order to get the panel straight, what I did was I took a piece of scrap wood and I put it along and screwed it to the 4x4 on each side, even with the top of the 4x4. Then I could just set the panel down on top of that, and then I could screw it in before I made my marks and cut it. That way I knew everything was level and square and didn't have to hold anything. It was so much easier. Okay, so now they have both sides on. I put the first panel up here around the doorway, and then I temporarily screwed it in, and then went inside and traced both the top up here and around the doorway, and then took it out and cut it with a grinder. The grinder worked really easy, and as long as you don't have like dry grass or something, it works really well for cutting out the doorway and the tops. The top is a little bit above the 2x4, maybe about 1/2 inch, to match the line going down the side, because the 2x4 is actually lower than the angle going up. So just something to keep in mind. So now what we're going to do is we're going to install a strip across here, another strip across there about 4 inches, and then I'll put another half panel right here, and then we'll do the end panel with 2 cutouts to match the strips over there, and then the front will be done. Then we just have the back and the roof. Okay, let me show you how I assembled the door. If you remember, I put this first panel up, and then I traced inside the frame, and then with a grinder I cut out that panel for the door, so I knew it would be fitting in there exactly however the frame was laid out. And so then what I did was I took some 2x4s and I just made an H-frame door like that. I made it 1/2 inch shorter and 1/2 inch less width. Okay, that gives me a 1/4 inch space all the way around. And then when you cut the panel, put the panel on this frame, first you make sure it's square by measuring diagonally. Then you put the panel on and you screw it down. And when you do that, that keeps the door from wanting to rack down or up, and it really makes everything so much more stiffer. All right, and then what I did was I put a piece of 1/4 inch plywood down along the bottom there, set the door on top of that, and then I flush mounted the hinges. These are 3.5 inch hinges, and I flush mounted them, and the reason I did that is so I would have more adjustability this way and that way. If I just put them on the inside of the frame right here, so that just this was showing, I'd be limited to my adjustment. So this allows me to create a little bit more gap here than I would be able to normally, and then it's a nice tight fit here. And then what I did is I bought one of these handles, these sliders, but because of this ribbing right here, this would hit. So what I did was I took some oak, some pieces of oak that I had laying around, and I just cut them. And the reason I used oak, and I pre-drilled the oak and ran these 1.5-inch screws through, was because there's a little bit of a ridge here that I had to crush down, and I was afraid the pine would crack. So the oak's much stronger, and so I painted the oak too, because oak will have a tendency to rot more quickly. So that's the door. Pretty easy, and I hope it helps you out. So now we're going to jump over inside. I had my grandson help me build the perches, and we're going to look at those right now. So here's a view of some of the perches I put in here, and they're just places for the birds to rest on and loaf around. And I originally cut 18 of these, and they're attached to the cross members, as you can see. So here's what they look like. They're really easy, and I just make them out of scrap wood or longer 2x4. And I just set a stop block in the miter saw, and my grandson Matt actually made these. He cut them down to 9 inches end to end, and then he put the pocket holes in them for the screws. I have a Craig pocket hole jig, and he used that and did a great job making these. And I put a little bevel on each end here, just so if I run into my elbow, doesn't hurt. And then the way you fasten them is you just hold them up. I made mine level. You can put them in along the bottom, anywhere you want. Just drop the screws in and run them in tight, and they're pretty solid. And that way they can be moved, or I can move them around, do whatever I want with them. Okay, so I have 18 in here. I'm planning on getting a dozen birds, and that should work out good. Now, as far as the nesting boxes, we built these as well. My grandson helped nail them together and help me assemble these. These are 12 inches deep this way. So this board right here is 4 foot long, 12 inches widthwise. And then these boards here, the dividers, are 12 inches this way and 11.5 inches high. And so I put a little bevel on these too, again, just so I'm not smacking into them and stuff. And then this is, I believe, 3 inches, this brace across the front. This just helps keep the nesting materials in a little bit, and it also stiffens it up. And the way I attached this was we just screwed it right to, I set it on top of the framing member, this way, the cross member, and then Matt went along and screwed down every bay, and then I just tilted the box up until the back was flush with the metal, and then we ran some screws in. That took care of that end. And then on this end, I just ran a 2x4 down and took another 2x4 and ran it across both members. I toe nailed it in down there, and then we just raised them up again till this was flush, ran some screws in from this side up and down, and that's what they look like. They came out really good. They're big enough for the birds, narrow enough for me to get through here, but this was actually plywood I had left over. So if you were to buy this, I would recommend you use 1/2 inch, because it's a whole lot cheaper. You can get some 1/2 inch wafer board for about $21 at one of the big box stores, and I would use that. So, but this is 3/4 I've had for years and years under my porch. I thought this is a perfect use for it. So Matt and I built these boxes, and he did an awesome job. So the only thing we have left is the door for letting the birds fly in and out of the coop or the loft. And so what I did was I found some 3/4 inch plywood, again, left over from the nesting boxes, and went ahead and just decided on a size. And this opening happens to be 13 by roughly 10 1/4. Okay, so you can make it any size you want, bigger, smaller. And what I'm going to do is, if you notice, I laid this out so the opening is centered in the ribs here. And the reason I did that is because I need to add a block of wood to bring this up, okay, to flush with this, so when I put the board on there, the door, that I have the hinges even here. So if I put it off to one side, it would look wonky. So this way I kind of centered it. I just moved everything over. and I put these in with pocket screws from the back side. And then what I did was I built this little shelf. Let me show you what that looks like. So as you can see, I have some pocket screws fastening this up to this cross member and then down to this bottom cross member, and then I put a piece in across here, did the same thing. I cut the wire first so it would be recessed a little bit in there. I'm going to staple that on later. Then I just cut a piece of plywood to fit here so the birds have a nice landing area, walking area. You can even use it as a perch to sit on and get a little sun or whatever. And then underneath I just kind of made up like what I had done for the perches, but I turned them on end like this, pocket holes, screwed them, fastened them to this first on both sides, and then I just screwed it down on top, 5 screws, and that's really solid. So now we're going to fasten the door on the outside with the latch, and super simple. And there's my dog Grace. She's having fun chewing grass. Okay, let's jump around the outside and I'll show you what I did there. Okay, so again, I've made these spacers for the door. Made them again out of oak and painted them black. And now I pre-drilled these, and I'm going to be using these 1.5 inch screws. They'll go right in here to fasten them right here. And I'll do that one there and one here. And then we can put the hinge on for the door and then the latch. So now what I'm going to do is put a chain here and attach it to the door and to the frame and adjust it so that that lays level like that when it's open, and then the chain will just fold inside when it's done. And then we'll add a latch up here to keep it closed, and that'll be it. So here's the chain. I fastened it up there, came down, and I bent this link because it's a double link, just so this link would lay flat and that would be at an angle. And I came over a little bit so that when I close it up, the chain doesn't get caught in this area. It'll lay inside, just like that. To open it up, just drop it down. Super simple, not a lot of work. Now we're just going to make the latch. We're done. Okay, so I just put a 16-inch board here, same as this. Screwed it into the cross member in 2 places. Put a washer on a screw and just pull it down like that. Nice and solid. Just lift it up like this. And I want to let the birds out. Simple as that. Nice and easy. Hey guys, I hope that video was a help for you today. And you know, if you found something that works better for you in your loft, maybe something you've seen that I didn't do, like maybe add more ventilation or maybe a different design or something, I'd really encourage you to put it in the comments below, because I'd love to learn from you. I'm just getting started in pigeons, and so I built that just taking a guess from the different researches I saw as to what I think might work best for me. Keeping it small and simple, but yet hopefully efficient. And so again, if you've seen something like that that you could add to it, I'd really encourage you to just put it in the comments below. I read every one, I try to, and get back to you guys, and it would be a big help to me, and I'm sure other viewers as well. You know, let me close out our time today by just saying this. You know, those pigeons that we are bringing home to our property needed a place, didn't they? In order for it to be a part of our family, I had to provide a place for them. And so that's what this loft and this video build was all about. But you know, God also says that He will provide a place for us. Let me share with you a passage in the Gospel of John, chapter 14. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. And Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. You know, in that passage I read, Jesus talks about not letting our hearts be troubled. And why is that? Because He is the answer to our troubles. He's the answer. He's the one where we can gain peace from. But in order to gain peace in Christ, we have to know Him. See, that's why He said, I'm going to prepare a place for you. He wants us to move our focus from the here and now and what's going on and all the struggles we have financially and through sickness and maybe divorce and maybe all kinds of things going on in our life. He wants us to move our focus to where He is going and where He is preparing a place for us. And He says He will come back and get us and take us there. You know, I was just at a funeral yesterday for a dear friend of mine. And you know, funerals can be very sad. But this one wasn't sad at all. Because my friend knew Christ intimately. He had put his faith and trust in Jesus Christ. He had turned away from his sins as a younger person. And he was walking through his life with Christ, clinging to Him all the way. And so when he passed this week from this life into the next, there was no doubt that he was going to the room that Jesus prepared for him. But you know, that's not the case with everybody. There are so many people in this world that are haters of God and lovers of self. They want nothing to do with God. And you know what? For those people, Christ has no option but to judge them and to send them to a place that was never designed for them, a place called hell. And that's a scary thought. To be able to go from having this gorgeous place that Jesus has prepared for you and me to facing eternity away from God in hell. But you know, in the end of that chapter, the hope that really lies in all of this is when Jesus said, you know the way, because I'm the way, and I'm the truth, and I'm the life. And nobody comes to the Father but through me. You see, all our good deeds, all of our going to church, taking care of the poor, all those things, they're great things, but they don't save us. It's not like there's this scale, you know, and we put good on one side and bad on the other, and it weighs out before God, and you know, if we have more good than bad, then we get to go to heaven. You see, you and I are sinners. We all know we're sinners. There's not one person I think I've ever met that said, I've never sinned. And you know, that sin, just one sin, keeps you and I from eternity in heaven. You might think that's extreme, but let me ask you this. How many times would you have to cheat on your girlfriend or boyfriend or husband and wife to destroy that relationship and have them ban you from their life? Just once, right? So it just takes one sin against the holy God to separate us from forever and ever from Him. And unless those sins are removed that we can't do ourselves, then we have no right to spend eternity with God. And that's what Jesus did on the cross. He gave His life on the cross to pay for your sin and my sin, that if we would just turn away from that sin, turn back to God, put our faith and trust in Him, that He would save us. He would cleanse us. He would give us a heart of flesh, the Bible says, removing our heart of stone, and He would make us His children. In the Gospel of John, the first chapter, verse 12, it says, "To as many as received them, to them He gave the right to become children of God." God wants so much for you to have a relationship restored back with Him again. He wants so much for you to enjoy that place He's prepared for you. But all it requires is that you put your faith and trust in Christ today and begin to walk with Him, like my friend did. Guys, if you're not sure how to do that, it's quite simple. It's just crying out to God, telling Him, confessing your sin before Him, asking Him to change your heart, asking Him to come inside of you and to restore your heart, to forgive your sins and make you His child. And if you want, I have written a free book. It's called Growing Deep. It's in the description below. You can click on it, start reading, but it takes you through how you can make that step to coming to know Jesus, how you can understand it more deeply. And then it shows you how you can walk with God on a daily basis. You know, the book isn't a long read. It's only about 16 to 20 pages. But in it, I share with you my life, how I came to Christ as well, how you can do the same thing. But more importantly, I take you through the scriptures of how you can walk with God practically and fully every day. And so, again, the book is free. It's in the description below. You can just click on it. It doesn't require your email or anything else to capture. It's yours free because I want you to know the joy and peace of Christ the way I do. And so, guys, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time and hanging out this whole time with me today. I know this was a long video, but I really appreciate you, and thank you for being part of our YouTube family. And so, until the next video, remember that God loves you more than you could ever know. He really does. So until then, take care and may God bless you richly.